Alright, so today I want to talk about possessions. What I mean by that, and how empathy and the mind works with possessions and the matter around us. As we know, or some of us may know, that the mind exists in the matter around us. We put some of our mind into the matters around us. If we have an affinity, a liking for, or an interest in something, then some of our mind goes into that actual matter, and it creates a system, a cycle in the middle between us and that particular object. For example, a stoplight. We memorize what the stoplight is. We have some of our mind in the stoplight, so when we see it, it triggers the memory. And we don't have to learn what a stoplight is every time. But what I really want to get into is possessions. And you can either possess possessions, or you can become possessed by them. These are all inanimate objects that I'll be talking about. Things from like relics to logos to sigils, things like that. And basically what the mind is energy. So we're putting in energy into the matter. So we have different types of clothing, religious types of clothing, religious types of, you see the priests with the scepters, they have these attachments to the scepters, the religious clothing and stuff, which can reach to unhealthy levels, which would then become them possessed by these possessions. And when somebody's possessed by the possession, they put so much energy into them that they almost give life to these inanimate objects. From having somebody's sneakers stepped on to where they flip out as if you really actually damaged their actual body, causing actual injury. Then all of a sudden a fight or something breaks out. Same thing with like there was an incident in France with burkinis a while back on the beach. Somebody had their burkini skin ripped off and they literally lost it. Stuff like that. Somebody loses, someone gets their hat knocked off or something. All of a sudden they think that's a very detrimental thing, as if causing bodily injury, and they react to cause bodily injury as if their life was threatened or something like that. So that's where somebody's possessed by possessions. And then the other thing I want to talk about is relics. There's all sorts of relics out there which cause the same kind of thing. An attachment where they draw out energy, they cause an affinity, a favoritism, stuff like that, where people start to become possessed. Basically what you're doing is using a trail of empathy, because empathy is like a stream of energy that either goes into something or it can be used backwards in a state of vampirism, or channeling to draw forth. I'll get into that in maybe a different video, but not right now. So you have these different relics, and the relics can also be possessions that can possess people. Now what's interesting or unique about relics is that some of these relics aren't even real. Do I believe that there's a real statue out there of a frog on a computer, such as in the Keck statue? No, I don't really believe that that's a real relic. I have my fun and fair share with creativity and imagination, but when it comes down to it, I don't really think that's a real relic. It might be. If it's real, then so be it. It doesn't really affect my life. you know, what if it's real, it'll be real regardless if I believe it or not. The truth is the truth whether we believe it or not. How important that is to me and my life isn't really that important, so it tends to fall to the wayside. It's not something that possesses me. So the relics can be somewhat possessing to us. But what's interesting about the relics is that some of them are real and some of them aren't real. So the ones that aren't real are just dead, empty nothings that can end up possessing people's mind. When really, actually, there's nothing there. So that's one of the kind of interesting things about a relic. And then you have stuff like logos, where people have a logo. There's a logo on darn near everything nowadays, and it's always about the brand name that you can trust. You know, you see the logo for a long time. People saw the Fox News logo, and you know, they would fall into the trap of believing. They'd fall victim to you know, like a presupposition, and they'd basically be dreaming at these logos when there's really nothing there or no substance in the programming. They had just been hooked by the logo, which is, you know, basically a form of a sigil, and you know, that they just believed. And at first, you know, you reel them in with something they can trust, and then you pull the floor out from under them. You pull the wool over their eyes, and they don't really know it until maybe it's too late or they find out the hard way. So that's some of the things with a sigil and a logo that can happen. We invest a lot of energy in these logos and these sigils, and you know, they can create mayhem. I don't know if you heard the Biggie Smalls song where he talks about sewing alligators on his shirt. I know growing up that Tommy Hilfiger and polo was highly important, and I mean, people were getting injured and hurt over these sigils, these brand names. You have to have the Louis Vuitton LV logo sigil thing on your purse, or else, you know, you're a this or you're a that. You're seen as one way or another. All over this logo, people are possessed by these logos, and you know, which is pretty much, again, people putting their mind into these different inanimate things, these symbols, which causes all the same type of thing. And that's actually the empathy. You know, it's almost like the symbols give life to themselves. Now the symbols are using your empathy against you, where the empathy is working against you as a channel into that sigil or that logo. You see the golden arches McDonald's, maybe you start tasting the French fries or something. You know, I used to have that a lot when I used to eat McDonald's back in my early 20s. You know, and then you pass by the McDonald's and you really want it, and it becomes a duality in your mind to go or not to go to McDonald's. The sigil or the logo literally did that to the person's mind. If they didn't really know what it was, or it wasn't something they had an affinity for, they'd keep on driving right past it. So that's one of the ways that logos work. And the other way they work on the opposite inverse is that if people don't have a specific logo, then people don't trust them at all. But it doesn't mean they're not trustworthy. I face that a lot, in not having like a PhD or something, or not having a special logo and brand name people can trust, is that people don't think that I have any truth to say or anything to offer. They go somewhere else where there's a logo, or there's you know, something that represents a learning experience that's been accumulated over years. We don't know all the ways to learning, and I can say right now that there's a way that man can learn that I don't think many people have experienced, and it's almost like learning in a rapid epiphany state right out of the air. So and it's like learning at light speed. That's how I learned a lot of what I know, just unexpectedly in this epiphany state. But maybe I'll get into that in another video. I do get into this stuff frequently on social media, my Facebook and stuff. It's just it's less time consuming for me to type something up quick on Facebook, especially when I'm multitasking or listening to music and things like that. I don't always have time to sit down and make a video, which I don't have a lot of podcasts done. I don't have any podcasts, in fact, but it doesn't mean that I don't have things to offer. So it doesn't mean people don't have anything substantial to offer if they don't have the logo or what we're expecting them to have. And that's one of the things that people don't get listened to about. We tend to have a hard time with communication as it is, and people tend to not listen to others because they're not having, they don't have the proper gear on, the proper logo on the gear. They don't have the brand name we can trust. We've been mind controlled over the years by all these sigils and relics and silly things, which are just inanimate objects. Whether we've been taken into materialism by that or, thrown into the black magic ritual of Black Friday, which, turns everybody into these materialistic drones that almost become animalistic. They're possessed by what they want, which is, the brand name stuff. They want the deals and they want to have that one limited time window of opportunity to get that, which almost intensifies the power of these objects. So that's one of the ways that logos work. And then we also have sigils. Now sigils can be pretty interesting in a unique way, but they're a lot like logos, and the sigil's effectiveness is based on how much energy people put into it. For example, people put a lot of energy, I see, into these memes, which are basically sigils. And it brings a lot of despair to people, especially the lonely types of people that see these sigils about dating or relationships or women. They put a lot of investment into that, and it brings them despair and misery. They literally manifest what's on the sigil, becoming mind controlled basically by the sigil, and they go out and their mind creates through belief the reality, or as it really is, the actuality. Reality is not our perception. Our perception is just a piece of the reality. But I won't get into that now either. But I do get into all this stuff that I have kind of skimmed over. So there's the sigil, which is unique also in itself. And it works by the way I just explained, and also in ways that what I call a reverse clown sigil, which is almost like the sigil works backwards, where it can steal up your power, such as some books can even be like that, where they make you think you're not ready yet, or you got to go out and do this off in time, where you can't be content because you just had this book put its power or steal your power backwards. Or in a case of, I took a healthy narcissism test one time by this top psychologist, and I just played along with it. I stay in a state of associative play a lot. I'm not really like a hard up, like, I need to believe this and I need to have this belief in order to exist. I kind of do like the opposite of that, where I use more of my imagination, and it's just kind of like a theatrical ruse. So I took the test, and I got one of the healthiest levels of narcissism that there was, which instantly prompted a thought in my mind like, oh, that's justified narcissism. Now I laughed at that, but really what that can do is damage people who are already narcissists, and they don't have the ability to recognize that. Then they go along with believing it, and then they end up in a state of justified narcissism. Then that can, escalate and evolve into an unhealthy narcissism. because now you think your narcissism's justified, you'll be more apt to find more meaning and investment in it. So that's a good example of a reverse clown sigil, as I call it. And there's also ones on the internet where, you take a quick test where you can see there was one going around recently. If you can see the letters through this, that means you're a genius. Darn near everybody got 167 IQ. It was pretty much just a hoax. The test wasn't even hard, so it was kind of obvious that really wasn't measuring anything. I just had to check it out and see for myself. Kind of being like, observer, explorer. I tend to do silly things like that. And, it makes life fun or whatever. It's like solving mysteries or something like that, just checking things out and seeing what's there. So that's one of the ways that sigils work, and you put a lot of power into these sigils, and you can manifest the reality or the actuality with them. Your actuality is what you're seeing in life, what you're experiencing, and the reality is unknowable, which contains the element of surprise. If we were all knowing, perfect and flawless, we'd defeat the element of surprise, and then we would therefore have a reality. But reality is the unknowable. It's kind of like the void. So we look at the sigils, and the sigils, they have some power to them, and from that power that we put into them, we start to believe them, and then our beliefs create the perception, which creates our experiences. Does it create our experiences 100% of times? No, but it's highly influential because there is always the unknown surprise. So in a state of despair where a lot of people are reading these relationship type things or these zodiac sign type things, you'd be surprised that you do meet a certain zodiac sign that wasn't like you thought. And that's a total element of surprise. But the whole time the sigil had people believing something else. Also, there was one in the New Age about the twin flame, the soulmates, and everybody was gung-ho on finding the soulmate. And they were almost so much so looking for the soulmate constantly that they probably skipped over a lot of good opportunities and surprised that they may have otherwise have found. Being focused in on this twin flame soul thingy, whatever they were doing. And that all has to do with the waveform being collapsed and sending people on a single trajectory path. That's waveform collapsation through influence, where it's not that we're the observer and we collapse the waveform collapses us into a single trajectory path. So, for example, in the double slit experiment, if I'm observing a collapsed particle, I see one particle, and then that particle, it remains as one, but it multiplies itself by the number of observers in the room. So we all see one particle, but it's really one particle, say, times 5 scientists looking at it. And they're all being collapsed by this one particle. They're seeing it from a different coordinate even. They're thinking different things of this particle. The particle literally collapses them. They don't collapse the particle, else the particle would mean all the same exact thing from the same position of view and same coordinate. So that's one of the ways that the matrix is kind of like an illusion. I do a lot of talks about the holographic illusion of the matrix on social media. Again, I don't make a whole lot of videos, but I'm always on social media. You can add me and find me and see whatever I'm typing about, just random ideas, silly soliloquies as I call them sometimes, and it might be some food for thought for you. And So anyway, that's basically how these different inanimate objects work with the mind and interaction with them. So you know, there's the inanimate objects of clothing, materials, possessions, which can become possessing. Then there's relics, there's logos, and there's sigils. And you know, you could use different variables to create and saturate the mind with more draw and effect towards these type of things. For example, if you use you know, the element of time, even everybody wants to, on Black Friday, they want the doors to open. You know, they're